In this episode, I'm with J.B. Bernstein, the GOAT of marketing athletes.
If on my tombstone it says that, JB was the hungriest entrepreneur that ever lived, that would be the ultimate compliment, because hunger is a very special quality. You can't teach it, you can foster it, but hunger is forged from adversity. If you're not willing to push your industry, if you're not willing to be evolutionary, then step out of the way and let someone else lead. If I can't change the industry, I don't want to be in it. I'll never forget when we signed Michael Jordan, and I remember thinking, this is crazy. Where can I be tomorrow that this industry needs me to be in order to take everybody where they need to go?
Everyone wants to be great, but only few actually get there. And I'm on a mission to find out what all the greatest have in common. I've traveled tirelessly to find, sit down, and talk with GOATs, people that are arguably the greatest of all time at what they do. Sales, marketing, advertising, business, podcasts, branding, you name it. The way they do things may be different, but they all seem to see the world the same way. To them, success is not only achievable, but inevitable. And we'll get inside their heads as they share their expertise with me each week. My name's Mike Arce, and this is The GOAT Show. This episode is sponsored by Loud Rumor. If you own a fitness studio, cryotherapy, or massage business, there is no company in the industry better at generating high-quality leads than Loud Rumor. In just the last 2 years, Loud Rumor has worked with nearly 1,000 fitness and wellness companies and won ranking Arizona's Ad Agency of the Year in 2017. Getting more paying members in the door can be tough. Let Loud Rumor do the heavy lifting and get new people in your doors every day. Go to loudrumor.com and learn more. Also sponsored by Agency GSD. Starting a digital agency was definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made. Building it, however, was a lot more challenging than I expected. I always wish someone just gave me a roadmap that I could follow and just let me be a fly on the wall at the successful agencies out there so I could really see how it's done. Agency GSD allows you to do just that. Stop playing small and visit agencygsd.com to learn how to help hundreds of clients get it to 7 figures and be extremely profitable along the way. Again, go to agencygsd.com. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Arce, and welcome back to another episode of The GOAT Show, where we interview people that are arguably the greatest of all time at what they do. And today, I'm here with J.B. Bernstein, the GOAT of marketing athletes. What's up, man? How you doing?
Great to see you.
Great to see you, too. So for everybody watching and listening, I want to set you up really quick first.
Okay.
Because you've done some really cool stuff here that drove me to want to meet with you and learn from you and figure out how I can just get the same type of mentality that you do when it comes to marketing, because it's really, really cool. So you've worked with athletes. You've been the agent for Barry Bonds,
yes.
Barry Sanders,
Yep.
Emmitt Smith.
Yes.
You've also run some incredible marketing campaigns. Groundbreaking is what it's called for people like Wayne Gretzky.
Yep.
Is that right?
True.
And it seems like you've essentially leveled up what it meant to be an agent. Everyone started to have to rise to your standards.
Wow. First of all, hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Secondly, that's big praise. What I like to think about as an investor, and predominantly, so everybody understands, I'm known mostly for sports because a lot of my more public hits have been in sports only because there's such a big focus on the athletes. So if you create a program for Wayne Gretzky, obviously it's got a lot of eyeballs, but I would argue, the program I created for Crisco at Procter & Gamble was, you want to talk about something groundbreaking, to get a campaign like that done, I won't get into it, but to get a really unique kind of entrepreneurial campaign done at a company like Procter & Gamble was Herculean. But
I do want to talk about, because the point is, what it sounds like is no matter what, as long as the mentality's here, you can market anything well.
The key is that if you're not willing to push your industry, if you're not willing to be evolutionary, then step out of the way and let someone else lead.
What do you mean by evolutionary?
So,
evolutionary or revolutionary? Because both of them, one of them you were talking about backstage with me.
I'm not a fan. Revolutionary to me has a sort of a negative connotation. Is you don't. It's not always a fight. It's not always a battle. Someone doesn't always have to die for the business to be advanced.
Right.
That being said, sometimes they do. Old ways definitely have to die. When I talk about evolution and creativity in general, what I talk about is brands who have, or entrepreneurs, athletes, companies who have the ability to anticipate not only where the market's going and what it'll need, but to be able to logistically deliver a proposition at that point, product, service, whatever it is. And to be able to continually do that along the life cycle of your company, you have to be able to evolve. Companies that don't evolve, like Blockbuster, who, when I was a kid, if you had told your dad, who probably had a big chunk of his 401k in companies like Blockbuster or Kodak, Polaroid, some of those companies have pivoted. I saw a kid the other day with a Polaroid camera that was both digital and Instamatic, like the old little shaker, but it was also digital and it would upload straight to his Snapchat.
That was
and so, they found a way to hang on. Flat screens, Kodak, not so much.
Right.
Film. There are entire industries that are just gone.
I mean, if dinosaurs didn't adapt, they go extinct. If companies don't adapt, they go extinct. And so that's the idea of the evolutionary.
But it's more than just, you don't want to just not go extinct, right? The goal to not die, that's like celebrating your birthday every year. I didn't die, right? Like I actually survived another year, yahoo. What you want to celebrate, I think, inside your birthday is, how much have you advanced your industry this year? How much have you advanced your family this year? Those are really measurable kind of goals. So when I look at myself and I think about evolution and creativity in my business, yes, you don't want to die. It's definitely a great goal for any businessman. But it's not that you don't want to die. What you want to do is, where can I be tomorrow that this industry needs me to be in order to take everybody where they need to go, whether it's milestone marketing for players, which is something, whether it was something I did with packaged goods, with a GIF or a Crisco, or whether it was something even now like what I'm doing with drones and industrial inspection. I'm a big believer in generational paradigm shifts. They don't have to be important.
What's a generational paradigm shift?
So I'll give you a great example. Upper Deck was a company that I was involved early on in. Okay. And I was really, really fortunate to move from Procter to Upper Deck very, very early in my career. And I was in business development. I got to work on all kinds of crazy things. But when I think about a generational paradigm shift for an industry, baseball cards for over 100 years, the biggest change they made was going from tobacco packs to gum.
Okay.
But a hitter was this, a pitcher was this, the cards were vertical, and I guess I should say there was a point at which it went from being an artwork to a photo, but terrible printing, terrible cards, and they just stayed at that printing technology of the 1950s when Topps really came in and started to mass produce them, right? So from 1950 to 1989, nothing. Same cards every year, same packs, same thing, no marketing, no nothing. Upper Deck comes in and literally blows the industry apart. Completely different production process, pulls the gum out, focuses just on the cards, secondary value, counterfeit protection, holograms.
The holograms were cool. I remember I was a collector when the holograms came out.
Oh my God! Who wouldn't? It was, and that's that feeling you had right there. That's what a generational paradigm shift feels like in your gut. When the core customer knows that that's the coolest point of trading cards in his life, was like, my trading card life just took this massive leap. And as a kid, okay, there are much more important developments like the polio vaccine or whatever. But in that industry, if I'm going to be in that industry, that's the kind of feeling I have to elicit in the customer. That's what I have to be driving towards. I have to be driving towards the next generation of what the industry is going to be. If I can't be part of that kind of a growth, that kind of a jump, that kind of an expansion, it becomes very mundane to do the blocking and tackling of managing a business for me. So as kind of a serial entrepreneur, I'm in a million different businesses. I need that. I need to know that I'm leaving my mark. And so maybe that's how I think about these things is, if I can't change the industry, I don't want to be in it.
Right. So when it comes to that, looking at this next generation, what are some things that you're thinking about? What are some things that you're working on? Because you're saying, okay, that's how they respond. That's their behavior traits. This is what gets them going.
Yep.
Okay, let's move in this direction. What is this direction?
Well, I've always had a decent barometer, and even just if you look at just through sports, had a real good beat on marketing early before most contract agents did. Certainly was one of the first guys to be able to utilize social networking to actually generate deals and revenue stream and a real kind of brand story to clients that was way better than just a Q score. And what I see now, the next level of things is, there's an interactivity that's evolving both through virtual reality, through drones. Augmented reality, I think, is going to be a big, big deal. And one of the things that I think is going to become a really big business in that space is going to be augmented reality rights, marketing rights, outdoors. So, for example, I'm walking around my Google glasses, and there's Mount Rushmore. Well, what's to stop some company from changing the faces out and charging somebody to put yours and my face on that, so when they walk by with the Google Glass? But you can't do that in real life. You shouldn't be able to do that in augmented reality. I should still own those rights. So there's going to be this huge battleground between augmented and real reality in terms of who owns those rights, number one. And then once that's determined, the monetization of those rights is going to be massive, because all day long, think about that is, how much would it cost for the government to sell you the rights so that when you bring your whole party out there for a big fireworks display at Mount Rushmore, that the four faces are you and your kids? That's incredible. Yeah, have you ever heard of the wine 19 Crimes? Have you seen it, where it's like you hold your phone over it and now that label starts speaking to you and tells you the story? I mean, when I saw that, that's kind of like, whoa. And then there's this other video I saw on LinkedIn of they were wanting to kind of set a trajectory of what this horse race might look like. And so, or not horse race, bicycle race. It was like a tour type thing. And, they're looking at this 3-dimensional track, and all the little bicyclists are they're real tiny, the size of a finger. They're just riding their bicycles, but they're all in one line. Right. And you're able to take them and move them, take them and drag and move them. And they are up. They're not. Right. They're not 2D. They're off. Right. They're holograms. They're little mini holograms. Right. And they're actually creating scenarios of how you can win this race a lot better by using augmented reality. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, the computer modeling and simulation. So that augmented reality is one thing. So people are concerned about AI, and so I look at AI in two buckets. There's basic change detection, fault detection, things like that where a computer basically is looking at a bunch of pixels and says that doesn't look right, and maybe it's something, a fault or this. The one that I think from a marketing standpoint will also be another kind of generational paradigm shift, because not only the ability to collect all the data, but now the ability to be able to process it. So a consumer like me, literally, scary, but I'm talking to people now with my phone in my pocket about something I'm thinking about buying, or something, like a vacation I think about doing, and then mysteriously ads start appearing when I log on to Facebook or whatever, or it might I might get a random email from a travel agent. It's just, and those things will start to creep in. At first they feel a little creepy, but it's good. But I think at the point, to automate a lot of that mundane stuff will make people more productive. But what it will represent between that and augmented reality is a lot of great marketing opportunities for a brand. So, if I'm an athlete and I'm doing an event, I'm going to go do an appearance, so now I have a partnership with one of the augmented reality brands. And so the people who are participating on that platform would have an entirely different experience. When they come up and take a photo, you're on Ford Field, right? And you're taking a photo against the backdrop of Ford Field, and there's 30 players from Lions history behind you, and they're all interacting with you. It's a video that you can take instead of just a picture, and it immediately uploads to your thing. And so, incredible. these technologies are so important, and what I get nervous about is people who get scared of technology or abuse, and you have to regulate things. You have to be careful. You can't let people abuse it.
Are you afraid of AI?
No, I'm not afraid of AI.
Why do you think so many people are afraid of AI?
They don't understand it.
Like anything you don't understand.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
We're not turning over the keys to our nuclear weapons to Skynet today.
Yeah.
The AI is like, it's so your refrigerator knows when you're out of milk. I mean, it's like a far cry from that.
Well, here's the thing I'm thinking too. Like, let's say it gets to the point where they're creating emotions and feelings, and they're creating self-thought and self-training and evolution within their own, computer system. At the end of the day, if I'm going to be the number 2 species to something else, I'd like it to be with somebody that's very calculative, somebody that doesn't necessarily make emotional decisions, and can if you think about it, they look at the world and go, all right, everyone's taking a ton of refined sugar in. Why are we still producing refined sugar? Let's just stop that. This is silly, right? Would they make decisions that maybe an emotional leader wouldn't fall victim to?
Right, and then, I only hope that doesn't happen, because the flip side of it, would they make a decision that's a machine, machine and not human, where they'd say, if we don't give them sugar for 1,000 years, evolutionary, we can make the change, but we'll kill off 65% of the population. But that's a good bet. So, but no, look, I'm not afraid of it. I think that used in marketing and in our daily life, it's going to be a massive convenience. I mean, how many times can I tell you when you're in your car and you don't get into an accident because you're going to the same place in your GPS, and it comes up right away instead of having to type 5 or 6 letters like you used to just a year ago. Yeah. Or the fact you can say, okay, Google, and they'll go do whatever you need them to do. Right. So that technology shouldn't be scary. Where it becomes scary is how it's used by the military, how it's used by the government to collect it. There's certainly areas where you have to be careful, but in figuring out what I want for dinner, I'm good with you taking a guess, computer. Right. I mean, what's the worst thing that happens is, no, I don't really feel like pizza tonight. Yeah.
It'll probably be a list
and
of 5 other suggestions.
They'll say, oh, no pizza, how about wings? You'll get it right eventually.
You'll get there. Maybe you inspire me. Okay, so I love that. Now, I want to take it back, because the stuff I want to get into was the evolution of you. So, what was your first swing, real swing at marketing, where you're like, this move that I'm about to make means something here, and if it works, it can actually put me in a whole different world. So what was that?
That's great. So it's a great. I'll tell a quick story. So it was my very first job. I was working for this ad agency, and our main client was Procter & Gamble, and I was on the Jif peanut butter account. Okay. And they gave us this more, and
when you find that out, I want to get the whole thing right. Sure. Said, JB, you're on the Jif peanut butter. Yeah. Is your first thought I don't know shit about peanut butter, or is it?
I've been eating it my whole life.
So you're,
man, I've been eating it my whole life.
Okay, so you know about the peanut butter. You've been a consumer for the peanut butter, so you were pretty excited.
Yeah, I've been eating 1,000 jars of this stuff in my life. I mean, at this point in my life, okay. So I'm a young guy. I graduated business school early, so I'm not quite 20 yet at this point. And I'm in New York City, and I'm a system account manager, and they give you Jif, and I'm looking at the research results that came in, and it says that we beat Skippy 2-1 in a taste test. And I'm like, that makes no sense, man. I went to the store the other day. It was 30 rows of Skippy and 1 of Jif here in New York. Right. And then I started to look at share data, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I analyzed 100 years of share data. I went all the way back to the mid-1800s. And it wasn't on Jif, it was on Ivory Soap. I went back all the way to the beginning of Procter & Gamble. And I saw that they were really strong in distributing in the center parts of the country. And the CPC, their main competitor, was strong on the coasts. And my premise was that because CPC was a water distributor, they had entrenched themselves on the coasts 100 years ago. And Procter had entrenched themselves. I said, but it was mid-1980s. I can get product anywhere in the country now just as easily as I can get it here. If they prefer it 2-1, I bet if we just bought the shelf space, we could convert a large share of the market and retain them. And so I went to my boss with this plan, and he said, you're an idiot. He goes, just sell media. We're not doing
You're
this.
a young
You've
kid.
been working here a week
You
or
think
something.
you-
Yeah, you know everything. And I said to him, if it doesn't work, I'll work for free for a year.
You told me.
Yeah, and the guy looks at me, and it was at the time, it was a very small bet because I was only making like $16,000.
No, it's a small bet to you today, but
right.
back then to you, that was your salary for a year.
I mean, I looked at it like I was broke anyway. My parents got me an apartment for a year, so I figured I was not going to be homeless. I was already broke every day, so it didn't,
At the end of the day, your life doesn't change much.
Well, I was going to say, what wouldn't I have? I said,
what do you say?
He said, you really feel that strongly about it, put together a plan. So I put together a plan, we presented to the client, and they did it. A test in LA and California was massive.
Now, did you present it?
Yeah, I did.
And there was no fear from either you or the company they're going to be like, we're Jiff. This guy just came in out of nowhere. He's a young kid. I don't know if I'm putting all my money on him. So it was just
I wasn't teed up like, hey, this is going to be the savior of Procter & Gamble's business. It was like, hey, one of our guys has an idea he feels really strongly about, and he wants to present it to you. We got a bunch of other things we want to present anyway. So it wasn't like a special meeting just for this. Right. But we presented all the stuff, and then I present my idea, and the guy said, he goes, hey, it's worth a shot. And I never even really thought about it at the time, but it was like a $50,000 or $60,000 expenditure, to do this test market program. And, even on Jif, it was probably like a $20 million ad budget at the time in the mid-'80s. Downey at the time, I think, was the biggest brand. It was like $125 million. So they were spending, so much money that this was like peanuts. Almost a no-brainer. If I had even said that I felt kind of strongly about it, I'd be like, I'll give it a flyer. Why not, kid? Let's see what you got.
Right.
And so the program was wildly successful. I mean, Jif's share went through the roof, and it just stayed. And then
so more people ratio started flipping and buying Jif versus Skippy.
We just bought the shelf space for a month. So instead of walking in and seeing 10 Skippies and 2 Jifs, it was like 20 Jifs and 2 Skippies for a month. And we were on the end caps, and we gave out some coupons, some peanut butter cookie recipes. Take your kid back to school, make them peanut butter cookies. Choosy moms choose Jif. And we made a huge inroads in both LA and it hung. And then 3 months later, I was working at Procter & Gamble, and they were like, hey, you're our guy. And then I was literally running a brand, and as a very young guy, going to my second round of business school.
Wow, that's pretty interesting.
But I mean, it was one of those times where I just had a gut feel, and I knew it would work, and I doubted the guy was going to take my salary anyway. I mean, like, what's he going to do? How are they going to not pay it? I was already set up in the system.
How strongly you felt about
I was willing not to, but I was pretty sure he was if it didn't work out. But I mean, it wasn't really a thought because I knew it would work.
Right. So the question I have is, what was Plan B? What were they working on if it wasn't for that?
Oh no, there was. I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar brand, so they have a national ad campaign. I mean, this was a very small little thing as a test, which ended up expanding out as a much wider area. But ultimately, I mean, this was one of probably 8 things the brand did that fall.
So one of the things you're known for is groundbreaking marketing campaigns for people like Wayne Gretzky. So give me an example of what is that? What's a groundbreaking marketing strategy?
So I was at a company called Upper Deck at that time, and Wayne was one of our guys.
It was baseball cards, all that, right?
Baseball memorabilia. We had licensing. We licensed our brand out to Mead to do school supplies, trading card T-shirts, all kinds of. We had different companies that we work with, and then we had companies that we worked with outside of the sports. Like we had Warner Brothers, where we did an animated version of some of our athletes and some of their characters, and did Comic Ball. We had a deal with a couple of different comic book writers from Valiant and different labels where we were doing animated superheroes of Marino and Gretzky and all. We were really doing some pretty cutting edge stuff. So I was in business development and involved in all that kind of growth. And I just said to the president of our company one day, I said, hey, we've got Wayne Gretzky under contract. I said, he's about to break this all-time goal record. I said, what if we treated that the same way they treat a Super Bowl? And he said, what do you mean? I said, like, as soon as he breaks it, immediately, HSN, well, we have a great relationship with them. We put the T-shirt, the hat, commemorative card, a signed puck, all that stuff. Boom, right for sale immediately. We immediately push it out in the arena, T-shirt, hat, on the ice, stop the game, clear it all with the NHL up front. I said, treat it like the Super Bowl. What has hockey got other than Wayne Gretzky?
Right.
No offense to hockey, but at the time, I mean,
it was
realistically,
a pretty boring sport.
In the early 90s, look, hockey was a great league, but they financially, Wayne, this was a big deal, him passing Gordie Howe, just like the home run record or any other record that was that sacred and been held by such a big guy and being taken over by the guy, was a chance to make money.
Right.
And so I said, hey, what if we treated it like the Super Bowl? Because to that point, they'd never really done athlete stuff this way. But when you think about it, what's the first commercial that comes on at the end of the Super Bowl from as long as you can remember?
Yeah, of course.
The hat, the DVD, and the locker room T-shirt. And they show the guys wearing it on the field.
Right.
They don't give it to them on the field because the guys want to celebrate in the T-shirts and hats.
It's all part of the marketing.
The guys only care about the trophy, right?
Right.
But not everybody can hold the trophy. So the hats and the T-shirts, they realized, would serve as that.
Right.
And so that's kind of became this great marketing piece. Now, we apply that to Wayne, becomes a huge success. The funny thing is, he had a terrible drought, like a 6-game drought between 801 and 802. So it was kind of like we had the guys following him with the shirts, and also the guys were taking the plan was as soon as he scored the goal, we were going to try to get as much game used stuff to sell as well.
Right.
So he's taking his shirt out, throwing all the stuff over the thing, and so when he finally gets to 802 and we do it, HSN does a live cut-in, and what do you think of all the potential programming that could have been on HSN at that time? Of course, the cut-in is into the amazing sweater maker infomercial, which is like this like yarn knitting device.
Right.
And I have no idea who's watching, but Wayne's stuff all sold out in like 10 seconds.
Really?
And so, I think that was just kind of we had done a good job of promoting it, and also people just knew to go to HSN for stuff like that. But it was a huge success.
At that time there wasn't really like an instant response in marketing from an activity that just took place?
No. As a matter of fact, what's so crazy was there was none of that. And so by the time they'd get the 802nd goal, he would be on like 809. Right. And who was going to buy that?
Right.
And so the whole point was if you couldn't, so everybody's attitude back in the old days was, and again, shifting the paradigm a little bit. In the old days, it's hard to do all that printing on site. It's hard to turn things quickly. It's hard to put a date on something. You don't want to.
It's worth it.
But now, most stadiums have printing facilities either on site or very close. So by this point, it was very easy to execute and profitable.
Some of the best marketers and advertisers I've talked to have all expressed the importance of speed and how important speed is and your timing. And so this is just kind of a clear example of, in your world, how it's played a role. It's not like, hey, we can't wait because he's going to be at 809. Sizzle's gone. Now it's what's the other record he may be looking at.
Or even worse, so then you wait till the end of the season. So then your other choice is you wait till the end of the season. So then he finishes at 822, and then you start selling 822 the second the season ends.
Right.
Great timing.
Right.
Right in the middle of the summer, too, right when the season ends, just when people are thinking about hockey.
Nobody is.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But this was the way things were done for a very long time, and that's the worst reason to do something, is because that's the way it's always been done. And so, that was another time where we thought, hey, if we could do this the way they did Super Bowls, I think we could create something called hot markets for players. And these milestone hot markets is what we did. And then we repeated it for Dan Marino when he got his 420th touchdown. And the one thing I always want to be clear about, because these guys are also my friends, is the agents that we worked with at the time for Gretzky, Mike Barnett and Ralph Stringer, these guys do what I do for my clients. So, they're heavily involved. It's not like we came to them with some kind of turnkey program and said, hey, Ralph, I bet you didn't even know Dan was going to break the record. Right. It's like we planned in conjunction. Ralph and I spent tons of time together for a year leading up to that. Everything from getting his statue perfect to getting the patches on the jerseys exactly the way everybody wanted them, and really putting things together perfectly for the fans. And same thing with Wayne, too. We worked really closely with his agent and him, and it's so
crazy when you think about, like, the beauty of that marketing is the consumer doesn't feel like they're getting a bunch of stuff jammed down their throat. the consumer actually feels, especially if they're a big fan, they feel more like a part of this than ever, right? Like, that's my guy. Wow, how big of a deal is this? Look how big of a deal it has to have been, because it's everywhere. So now the person that thought it was great that he broke the record, hey, that's great. That's great. Now is getting his perception of this is being bigger, because now everywhere he looks, he's like, wow, this is big. And so now the difference might be when he has that conversation with the person at a barbecue, without all that marketing, he might have been like, hey, did you see Gretzky got 802? Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Huh? Yeah, that's it. To, did you see Gretzky got 802? Oh, did he? Did he?
Yeah.
What? That's like the biggest deal in the world. Aren't you looking? It's everywhere. But it's everywhere for that person to say that.
No, you're. What I realized through that process and through working with Upper Deck was that we were letting people buy pieces of history, pieces of their guy's career. I realized the first time when we cut up a game-used Babe Ruth bat. It wasn't like the last one in existence. We took a lot of flack.
Right.
Why would you cut it up? Well, there were like 100 in existence, supposedly.
Right.
But we cut it up into 2,000 little pieces and embedded those into cards and inserted them randomly into our baseball set.
Wow.
So some kid in Dubuque, Iowa opens up a pack and literally has a piece of a bat that Babe Ruth used in a game and a card that he can show all his friends. And to me, I said, that is one of the coolest things that you can't do in any other business to date, is, you know, and so the memorabilia, the trading cards, but it's beyond that, because what I realized with Gretzky in this moment was whether somebody wanted a T-shirt, whether somebody wanted the signed puck, whether somebody wanted the photo of it, whether somebody wanted the commemorative jersey, whether somebody wanted the hat, whatever they wanted, whatever they were buying a piece of a moment that they felt more a part of, because of the ability to be able to buy into something right then and there, and to be part of a group and to see the counter to only 12 T-shirts left. You know, it does make you feel that sense of urgency adds to the euphoria of it.
Right.
And so I didn't necessarily know all that at the time, but you saw it immediately. You could just see by the purchase how quickly things went, how excited people were. And it was bigger news. They had never stopped an NHL game like that.
Right.
Bruce McNall rolled a Rolls Royce out onto the middle of the ice. The game was stopped for like 10 minutes.
Really?
They rolled this massive, like, classic Rolls Royce Phantom that they gave him. They rolled that out on the ice.
And that's all part of the marketing
players
plan.
were there. Everything was there. The T-shirts, the hats. It was like maybe not 10 full minutes, but I mean, it was a long stoppage, because remember, they put the carpet down and roll the thing out, and everybody stopped, and they have the thing going on the Jumbotron, and I mean, it was something else, man. It was a spectacle.
So you've gotten to do great stuff like that with Wayne, and now I know you've worked with Barry Bonds and Barry Sanders. Barry Bonds had his own record. He had his own thing he was chasing.
A lot of records. Yeah.
Barry Sanders, same thing. So what was your first major athlete to where you're like, you went home, and were you married at the time when you got your first athlete? Okay.
No.
So when you went home and you just like started fist pumping in the air, or like whatever it is that you did to just get it all out, that like, I can't believe this is my client. Who was that guy? And tell me about that like process.
So, unfortunately, my ride at Upper Deck was so crazy that I never ever had that feeling as an agent, because I got that
smooth transition.
I had that feeling at Upper Deck, so it's the same kind of thing. So I'll answer it better that way. It was like, who couldn't you believe that it actually signed? So, you know, we had so many guys under contract even by the time I came on, but I'll never forget when we signed Michael Jordan, and I remember thinking, like, this is crazy that Michael Jordan is going to be in a TV commercial for our company. He's our main spokesperson for our company. This is like...
Now this is in like, is this 1988 Michael Jordan? Is this 1992 Michael Jordan?
This is 1990.
So this is the guy that's just about to win the championship.
Year
Michael
before.
Jordan.
Year
Wow.
before, yeah. And
already people are saying he's probably the greatest. At this point,
I mean, I'd never seen anybody better. I'd been watching him since Carolina.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge college basketball fan. And you could just see he was scratching the surface in college. But again, no knock to any other player. But there are certain guys who their presence in the game is so special and different that there's a different feeling in the stadium when those guys play versus other great players. And the thing about Jordan that I loved, the thing that I most related to, and we talked about at the outset, was that you had a feeling that there was just no circumstance under which it was going to be acceptable for him to lose. He just willed wins. He absolutely won tons of games he never should have won. He won every game he should have won. The guy was literally the most stubborn and most hungry player I've ever met in my life. And if on my tombstone it says that, JB was the hungriest entrepreneur that ever lived, that would be the ultimate compliment, because hunger is a very special quality. You can't teach it, you can foster it, but hunger is forged from adversity, from want, from the need to get to a different spot, because this spot is not the spot you want the next generation of your family. Now, I don't know if Michael knew basketball was going to be this kind of a transformational thing, but the attitude of every game, of never giving up, of never being acceptable to lose, that guy was so the crazy story. So I'm going to meet him for the first time, and we're going over there to sign these 2,500
So
books.
Now we're about to meet Michael Jordan today.
Oh, yeah. I'm going over I'm going to his office because we have 2,500 books for him to sign.
Okay.
So I walk in, and I'm like, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" And he looks up. He's like, "Oh, I'm JB from Upper Deck." I said, "We're here. Your agent told us to come in and get the signing. I got a box." He's like, "How many books you got?" I was like, "Oh, we got the books for you to sign, and he's like, "Oh, just one box? That's not so bad." And as I walk in, the guys behind me's got like a hand truck with 5 boxes on them, and he looks at me, and I was like, "Oh man, I can't believe this is how you're going to let me meet Michael Jordan." I was like, "Agent,
I'm the guy that's got the
they told me he's coming over with a couple of books. It was like 2,500, and he had stuff, but he was so cool about it. And I just remember in that moment, I think like, I can't believe this is a job. This is what I get to do. I created a custom edition of Walter Yost's book on Michael Jordan, and we're sitting here getting him sign it, and we're telling him why he's signing. He's talking to us.
How long does it take to sign 2,500 books?
It took him about 4 hours.
And so you guys are talking for that whole time?
Oh yeah, the whole time.
How was that conversation?
It was amazing.
You probably picked up so much from a guy that thinks the way he does.
You know what's funny? I got to meet with him a bunch of different times because we did a few different signings, and I can tell you that he was a really smart athlete. And I don't say it because the stereotype that athletes is, he was a smart athlete. He got the absolute maximum out of his career. If he was a fireman, I believe he would have gotten the absolute he would have been nationally decorated as a fireman.
He didn't leave anything on the table.
This guy, whatever his career was, he would have been the best. If he had been into politics, he would have been the president. He just is one of those guys who, whatever, he's the personification of the American dream, right? Because if you really break it down, you have to be willing to make the sacrifices necessary to be successful. Look at those 2 Indian kids. We didn't talk about $1 Million Army yet, but just real quick, those 2 kids, they come to America with nothing. They leave behind the most promising career. They were both going to get into the military. Best possible career someone who lives in the village could get. And dangerous, but best possible job. They walk away from that, don't speak the language, come to America, different culture, different food, different everything. They've never heard of baseball. They never trained before. They don't know anything. They 6 months later sign with the Pirates. A year later.
How? How does that happen?
Because they were willing to make the sacrifices necessary to be successful. And when you're willing to do that.
So let's talk about that, because I think now everybody that just heard you say that says, okay, never played baseball, 6 months later they're playing for the Pirates. Okay. How do I learn more about that? Because that sounds like there's a lot of the right work put in, almost unbelievable result that occurs. So that's called $1 Million Arm. Mm-hmm. So now we're going into season 3 of $1 Million Arm.
Yes, next year. Yeah,
okay,
finally.
So 3rd show. and there's something with Jon Hamm too?
Oh, that back in 2014. So when the kids from the first contest got signed by the Pirates, it became a kind of a big news story, mostly because the day of their tryout in Arizona, they were on the front page of the sports section of the same USA Today where Obama won the election.
Right.
So it's literally the most popular paper in the history of the world. I like to laugh. I was like, that front page is the most kept paper in the world, and the sports section, I'm actually on the cover of the most thrown out sports section in the history of the world, because throughout, no one kept the sports section from that edition. But Disney saw it and made a movie called $1 Million Arm, which came out in 2014. So Jon Hamm played me in that movie, and two great actors, the kid from Life of Pi and the kid from Slumdog Millionaire, both played the two Indian kids, and it was a very cool thing for them to get their due. People that they make movies about, it's never, it's not like I would much rather been, I guess, Iron Man. Yeah, Iron Man did way better than I did on his movie. But
it's one of those things that, like,
it was a legacy
in the
for the
industry,
kids.
people appreciate.
I hope so.
The average person thought, Mad Men was okay. I thought it was amazing, right? And then you take certain movies that didn't hit a home run in certain areas, but then with everyone in that market, it's like, this is the best thing ever. We needed this. They don't understand how they go huge, right?
Well, it was. Look, it was never going to be Avengers, but it did. I think it did pretty well. I mean, we ended up, I think, doubling the studio's money.
Yeah, you've had great people in it.
And like I said, and the movie itself, what I was proud of was the Rinku and Dinesh got their due, and their story got so publicized, and it led to some other deals and some other opportunities for them. But my point is, in terms of the sacrifices necessary, so they gave up everything. First of all, there was no. If this didn't work, they were going to end up going back and work in the fields on their family's farms. They were giving up the military, giving up their family, giving up their friends, their girlfriends, everything gone. And a lot of their family people didn't think this was a smart move, obviously, to go to the United States to play baseball. No one even knew what baseball was as a sport. It would be almost like some kid coming home as a high school senior and saying, "Mom, I know I just turned 18, but I don't speak Hindi, but this Hindi guy found me in a game show, and he's going to bring me halfway around the world to India to train for 6 months to be a professional cricket player. See ya." Right. And so just getting over that hump, getting to the United States, Rinku was like 185 pounds, 6'2". By the time I think he showed up for training camp, he was like 6'4", 220, 230, just changing their diets, supplementation, workouts. These guys were doing 2 hours in the gym every morning and every afternoon. The coach would say, get there at 6 a.m. They'd be there at 5 working out for an hour before the guy would even show up. They'd say, go pitch 10 bullpens. They'd pitch 20. Go pitch batting practice. Go do this. Go clean the locker room. Wow. And then when they were done with all that, they would sit there all night with the Baseball for Dummies book and quiz each other back and forth
on just the rules, the concept
they had no idea what even to do as a pitcher. If the ball gets hit into the right fielder, what do you do?
Right.
Back up their base, back up home plate, back up here, back up there. But the good news is they didn't have to hit, and they didn't have to call their own pitches. So they were like a coach's dream, because Rinku didn't realize until he'd already been playing for 1 year in the minor leagues that you could shake off a sign. He just figured if they called the sign, you had to throw that pitch even if you didn't feel it.
Right.
And finally, one day he was on the mound, and they call the sign, and he calls the catcher to come to the mound. He goes, "I don't want to throw this pitch." And he goes, "So don't throw it. What do you want to throw?" And he goes, "You can do that?" He had no idea.
The whole time.
Yeah, he's shocked. He's like, "Oh, this is great." He goes, "I'm calling all my own pitches now." He goes, "I can't do that." But these kids, in every possible way, gave up everything and put every ounce of their being into getting better every day. So from May until November, every day, they worked hard. Tom House, great training around them. They were at USC. They were in the best possible conditions to be able to accomplish something like that. But again, I would argue something like this has never really been accomplished. To take a kid even an athlete, but no one who's ever played any sport you've ever heard of. I think this kid was throwing the javelin. I mean, was the closest thing to like an American sport. But in essence, they're all cricket players. They play cubby. They play different things over there that we just don't play over here. But certainly baseball is nothing. These guys came over here, didn't know the sport, didn't know the rules, didn't know how to play. They just were guys who could naturally throw fast. And literally within 6 months, were good enough to get signed. And 13 months. My favorite story is I take them to a baseball game their very first day in America, Washington against USC. And they'd never seen baseball. And it's the top of the first inning, and the USC guys just rolling the ball around the infield, and they're arguing. And I say, what's wrong? And they say, what's the guy done? And they're pointing to the shortstop, and I say, nothing. The game hasn't started. And they say, what's this guy done? I say, nothing. And they say, well, we don't get it. They said the knight in shining armor gets a pentagon, the first baseman gets a square, second baseman gets a square, third baseman gets a square, pitcher's got a hill, this guy's got nothing. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to explain to these guys that the shortstop's the only guy in the infield that doesn't get a geographical marker? 13 months from that conversation, Rinku won a game in the minor leagues coming out of a bullpen. I mean, that's never been done in the history of sports before. I mean, take a guy from that position to do that in a year. I mean, it's unbelievable. But what it does show is that, not just in baseball, in any career, if you're willing to really make those kind of sacrifices, the American dream is there. And I think I'm an example of that. I mean, I feel like I sacrificed a lot. I mean, I graduated school early. I missed a lot of my youth. People might say, if they looked at my kind of life in the rearview mirror, from the time I was my late teens to early 20s, I worked 20 plus hours a day, 7 days a week, till I was almost 40, and get married till my mid 40s.
Do you regret that at all?
No, I don't at all. I mean, I've got a great family. I have my wife, and I got a great kid now. I feel like I'm in a better position to be a father. I think the type of businessman that I am doesn't lend itself well to even having a plastic plant, much less having a family. And so, that was the path I needed to take. But yes, of course, I mean, I recognize it was a sacrifice. I mean, I realize I'm not likely to see a grandkid. I was laughing the other day with one of my friends. I said, my kid will graduate college in 2033. Now, when I was a kid, 2033, you would think of that like Jetsons. Like people, like your car folds up into a brief.
Jetsons is 2015 or something.
But that's what I was thinking. Like, this is what it would really be like. Like, my car would already be folding into a briefcase, and to think that my kid will first be looking for a job in 2033 is so you do think about how things might have been differently, but I don't regret it, because I feel like I've given the best I could to my career. I'm giving now the best I can to my family.
I think too, you look at it like, okay, we miss out on those 2 to 4 years, right, where it's like everyone's having fun, everyone's crazy. And I think the reason people tell people to cherish those years, like to go out and have fun, is because for most adults, that's their prime.
Yeah.
For most adults, their college life, all the parties they went to, that's their prime. Everything after that's boring. But when that's not your prime, when you literally keep pushing your prime out in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s and your 50s, this is like the worst time.
Yep.
Like if you did go out and party, that's a time that you're like, I was an idiot.
Yeah, right.
You know?
The funny so I never really thought about it as my prime. I always think about it as
it wasn't yours.
No. I don't know. That's what I mean. I never thought. I have a different demarcation, right? So I call it the delineation of hope, right?
Right.
So in college, everybody thinks they're going to be a pro football player. They're going to be the Stephen King. They're going to be a movie star. They're going to be this.
Right. Because
the superstars, even in their own college, think that that's what it's going to be like in the real world. And up to that point, they were the stars in their high school. And so,
the path seems clear
at each step. So if you're that high school superstar that doesn't make it in college, that's where your delineation of hope. And so you're talking about in terms of prime. But really, what is it where people give up the hope of their dreams and say, okay, I'm just going to have a regular job, or I'm just going to, and it's sad because they're literally choosing to not be successful.
Yeah.
It's easier psychologically, though, to give yourself that out.
Right.
Because as a young kid, you can be like, I had that injury, and I missed my tryout, and I missed my window, and now guess I'll have to sell insurance.
And now there's no cool prime coming up.
Right.
And now everything's a shadow.
Well, everything feels like a rearview mirror because your whole thing was pinned to a dream that you don't feel you can chase anymore.
Right.
Look, I would have loved to have been the center fielder for the New York Yankees. I can't play baseball for crap. Who wouldn't have, though?
Right.
But I found a way to create a career in sports, meet all my heroes. One of the greatest meetings was Mickey Mantle. I loved meeting him.
Wow.
It was awesome. He was one of our spokespeople at Upper Deck. So
That's amazing.
I got to work with him a ton. So, I'm the perfect example. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I figured out a way to take my talents and still be able to chase my dreams.
Even if they're not
you gotta evolve.
in line. Like right now, you're known, like you said, for $1 million arm. You're known for being a sports marketing agency. Maybe even some people know you from Procter & Gamble, but now you're working on stuff with drones.
Yeah.
Like that seems like it's in a different bucket. It doesn't seem like it's the same anything.
It's definitely not. Well, look, there are other less sung investments that I've made over my career. I had a building block company called Arce Blocks that was pretty successful and then was sold to a bigger company that sells school supplies. But it's basically blocks built to different architectural periods. So we had a postmodern set and a Greek, and it was a great marketing ploy where parents thought they were giving their kids something educational, and that I thought columns made really good gun turrets. And that basically you only had four shapes. You had a cylinder, a triangle, so this just gave cool shaped blocks.
Sure.
I had a supplement company that we sold and did very well with. So, I've had companies and I've been in businesses in lots of different categories. And then when I was with Major League Soccer, they were one of my clients. So I helped found Major League Soccer, and I was head of licensing. So when you're head of licensing, you're dealing with companies from every category. So you got to know how they make T-shirts. You got to know how they make the lapel pins. You got to know how they make the figurines. You got to know how they make the video games. So in each of those categories, you have to become knowledgeable. So I really am a guy who knows way more than I should about a ton of different industries.
So how did you get into drones?
So that's the crazy part. I made an investment in this drone company. I got a couple of other friends to invest in it because I thought I could replace cable cam. When I met the company that I bought
What's
into...
cable cam?
Cable cam is the camera that goes over on cables.
And all
exactly.
That. Yeah.
It's really bad and it's dangerous. And if the cable
snaps,
snaps,
it's more dangerous than drones.
Oh, way more.
I mean, what if I throw the ball up, it hits the drone comes down, hits a guy?
That'll never happen.
Never happen.
If you're good enough to hit the drone, you're good enough to hit the open receiver.
It's like Shaq bringing down.
Well, the drone would never be within range of a receiver.
Hit.
I mean,
Got it.
The thing is, much like the Skycam operates in safe zones, the drone would too. The difference is Skycam's limited by the cords.
Yeah.
Technically, it could think it's in a safe zone, which might not be safe and can't move.
Right.
The drone can always go to a place where there's no people. Yeah, it can go anywhere there's no people. I mean, the thing is, look on a football field. Most of it is empty. Mm-hmm. The drone, to give a good view overhead, wouldn't have to be directly over the people.
Right.
But it could do all kinds of things like goal line that you can't do with that, behind the nets for field goals, all kinds of cool. So I was just thinking like that. And I met these guys at an arena football game. They were flying for Vince Neil's football team. And they dropped the game ball to Vince from a drone to start the game. And then the drone's flying the whole game, and the feed's going to ESPN3, and they're broadcasting live. So
and it's high res, and looks great.
It looks HD. And then the ref, there's a penalty, and the ref walks over and goes, I only want to see the drone footage. Everything else is crap. And so I'm thinking like, oh my God, generational paradigm shift.
Right.
Going to take this to a new level. It's great for officiating. It's better for safety. It's better for broadcasting.
Right.
It's a home run. I was like, there's a big business. They charge a lot of money for cable cam. 16 games a week, plus this, plus soccer, plus baseball. It's like, this is amazing.
Right.
Olympics. And so I make an investment in this company, I get into it, and I meet with a commissioner of a couple of the leagues, and they make it very clear to me they're actually only interested in the opposite. They want anti-drone technology. Can I keep drones out of the stadium? But they're not allowing drones in. Much like your reaction, they see it immediately as very dangerous, no matter what we talk to them about safety, no matter if we bring in the FAA to talk to them about it, they didn't care. They want to hear it, they don't want it, they're not interested, not on their watch. They got other problems. They're trying to keep drones out.
So you at this point, you go, I just need one to say yes. If I can get one to say yes, everyone's going to have to realize what...
Right. Well, I was thinking that, but the reality was I was kind of licking my wounds because I knew no one was going to say yes. So at the same time, though, the guys from the drone company say to me, they say, we appreciate everything you've done for us, and it's great. You helped us raise this money, and we love you. But can we show you something? And I said, sure, what? And they said, so here's this power company that we work for. And if we could replace all their helicopters, they spent $300 million on helicopters last year to do inspections of the power lines.
From high up.
They do it 1,200 feet. We can do it about 100 feet. So we can use lots of sensors they don't use, and we can get much closer. And the bottom line is, we can get them way better data. We can find more faults, find things before they break, and that's the holy grail.
And it's going to be way more affordable.
And if you get 10 companies that are spending $300 million a year, it's a $3 billion a year business.
Right.
So it's not bad if you can find 10 clients to get to $3 billion in sales. And he said, how much cable cam do you think you get to? And I was like, I don't think we get to $3 billion if we did cable cam for 20 years. And so I was caught in this position in my life where I said, I have a chance to actually make a generational paradigm shift in an industry I've never done it in before. The reason why I took this one on more than anything, though, is in the oil and gas industry, literally hundreds of guys die every year in these inspection-related accidents. And a lot of them are aviation-related, which is something that we can solve. A lot of them are also putting guys in really dangerous situations that drones can go and do those inspections and not have to put people in them. And same thing with electrical workers. I think it's the 8th most dangerous job in the world.
Really?
So, confronted, kind of towards the end of my career, I'm 50, and I've invested in this company. I love the guys, I love the technology, and there's a real chance to make a massive generational paradigm shift and save lives. And so I said, you know what? I said, let's do it. Let's do it. And I became the CEO of an industrial inspection company that focuses on, institutional infrastructure like oil, gas, power. We fly power, gas lines, oil rigs, and provide the data back to those companies.
And what's the name of this company?
Avasight.
Why'd you call it that?
Bird's eye view. So Avasight.
Got it.
And just kind of in essence though, it's funny. So the other thing I learned about drones as I got into this business is drones are cool for about 10 seconds. Data is what's cool. So what happens for these companies, whether it's a broadcaster, the drone spins up, it looks cool, the lights are flashing, it goes up, it drops the ball, whatever. And then once it's kind of in the air for a minute or two,
everyone's over it.
Well, it's just there.
Yeah.
It doesn't do any, there's no tricks, so it's there, it's hanging there. And what happens is now immediately what they do is they go to the monitor. So they want to see if you're broadcasting a game, show me something you can't do with cable cam. Here you go. How about behind the net for the point after?
Right.
Or for a 50-yard field
goal. Could you get to the point where you're literally following a wide receiver that catches a ball 40 yards away from the end zone, and you follow him zigzagging?
The best one is the pick six. The best one's the pick six. We did that at an arena game, right? So the guy picked it in the back of the end zone, pick six in his own end zone, and then ran it back for a touchdown, and we followed it the whole play the whole way.
Wow.
So, so that's entertainment. But so I call it data, but you would call it film, right?
Right.
So, but anything that comes off the cameras or the sensors to me is just data. So if I'm a power company, same thing. They're just as excited about being close, and now all of a sudden they're seeing stuff that you couldn't see from far away. So they're able to fix things before they break, which we know is way cheaper than waiting till they break.
Right.
And also it's way better for us because our power doesn't go out, and we don't have oil explosion, and people don't die, and all this other stuff. So the most interesting part of the transition has been, of all the businesses I know something about, these are the only businesses I know almost nothing about, is oil, gas, and power. I've learned a ton, but coming into it, they sponsor golf tournaments and things like that. So they're marketing folks, but you don't really know how their businesses work, and you never really think about it. But they're all maintenance organizations.
Yeah.
Power companies aren't building new lines. They just got to make sure your power doesn't go out, because they can't charge you if it goes out.
Right.
And if they have to reroute power and all that, it becomes very expensive. And they can't charge you, because if it's their problem. Right. Now, if you blow up your house, that's your problem. But I mean, if if you're rigging your wires, same thing with oil and gas.
Right.
If you can't get it to the refineries, if you can't get from the refineries to the substations, if you can't get them out to the pumping stations. Right. So all along the way, any outages, any stoppages, a rig stops pumping, could lose $1 million a day if a rig's not pumping. So these are all solutions that we're solving, but they're all underwritten by this big safety case. And so the first time in my life, I am actually getting to make that kind of an impact. So it's exciting. But yeah, the uptake for the first time in my career actually took me a long time to understand how these industries work, and to understand their cost centers and their pain points, and how to solve them. And, but we've done a pretty good job, and we've got a pretty nice list of clients in oil and gas. And we just unveiled a brand new piece of technology, another generational paradigm shift, which allows us to operate beyond visual line of sight. So it's this mobile command center we launched. So it's funny to talk about all this technical stuff on the sports broadcast, but I won't weigh it down.
No, it's, and so to kind of like come full circle with the whole thing and close it out, there's a question I like to ask people, just kind of see where they're at. And it's, if you could have dinner with anybody in the world, who would it be? But the funny thing is, there's a lot of people that would say Barry Bonds. There's a lot of people that would say Wayne Gretzky. And there's a ridiculous amount of people that would say Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
You've gotten to sit down with those guys already.
Yeah.
So for you, like, who's the person, man, woman, who's dead, alive, who's the person you would love to sit down with?
So, and it's funny, because I think about it all the time. It's very easy. It's Ben Franklin.
Okay.
And
why?
So, in a lot of ways, I feel very linked to Franklin. Certainly he was an inventor, an entrepreneur, and certainly was not the kind of guy to settle down early necessarily, but he was the kind of guy who seemed to be really driven to push industries. I mean, inventors would first of all, he never patented any of his inventions. So he never profited really from any of them. He invented from the lightning rod all the way down to everything the teletype, everything he'd ever invented, the printing press, all that stuff. Never patented any of it. The other thing that I thought was so interesting was inventors, anybody could send him something, and he would look at their design and fix it and send it back to him. And so in some ways, I like to do as much as I can. I can't tell you how many times I talk to other agents in the business. They'll call me and say, hey, what do you think about this? Yeah, and it's gotten to the point now where it was funny. I was talking about this with Maggie yesterday in my office, and she comes in and says, hey, I'm meeting with Lyft next week, and she goes, and we want to do something cool for Barry Sanders during his Heisman week. And literally right off the top of my head, I'm like, oh, simple. I was like, Barry be a celebrity Uber driver, do a press conference, he'll drive around Manhattan in one of those Nissan Armadas that's all decked out with the Heisman. We'll put his trophy in the front. You won't know you're getting picked up by Barry.
You see the picture right away.
Yeah, you get a sign ball when he drops you, and literally Barry and an Uber driver drive you around, and they have cameras inside the car. You broadcast it all on Snapchat. It's a huge home run, and you could actually do, I was like, I got a TV commercial for that too. And she's like, you have a TV commercial for that? And I said, yeah, sure. And I tell her, I said, well, this is what they should do. They have Barry Sanders with a guy on his back running around the city, and like Barry Sanders would, making wrong turns, going down an alley, jumping over a dumpster. The guy he's carrying has like a McDonald's wrapper in his hair, just really disheveled, and then Barry gets it to him and pulls up, and then drops him in front of this building, and another guy pulls up in a Lyft car, and Barry just looks at the guy in the Lyft car, and he goes, man, these guys are going to end up taking my job or something,
Right.
And she laughed, and she goes, okay, that's perfect. And she goes, you just all came up with that off the top of your head. And I said, yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's what I do all day long is people call me and they say it and the idea pops out. So in some ways I'm hoping that I have that like little bit of Ben Franklin in me. I can't use them all.
Right.
And so and then if you don't get them out, it gets stuck up in there. Right. And so the more I can come up with ideas and spread them around, the better. But it's just funny how you mentioned that. I was thinking that the other day was, you never want to compare yourself to Ben Franklin. He's one of the forefathers. I mean, the guy it makes me look like a jerk.
But there's things about him
but
that
his
inspire
attitude,
you.
His attitude towards other people, towards evolution, towards advancement, it's not about credit.
Right.
It's about moving everybody forward. And so you can't do everything yourself. If you can provide a little fresh eyes or a fresh perspective, help this guy, help that guy. When I do my public speaking, that's all I hope is that maybe one or two people in the audience after hearing me speak won't quit something that they're working on and just push just a little further. I think it was Edison, right? Edison said that most people would have kept going if they knew how close they were to succeing when they quit.
Right. If you can see it's like the 3 feet from gold model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might, for all you know, your next try might work.
Right. JB, man, you're awesome. And the more I got to learn about you beforehand and really just kind of hear more about you, and it's like, man, this guy's really done some great stuff. And then as soon as I feel like, okay, this is what this guy's done, I would read another layer, and I'm like, okay, wow, this guy's done this too? That seems kind of crazy. And you've just got a lot of layers to your career. You should be very proud of yourself, man. And now, to somebody else, you are like the Ben Franklin, right? So, man, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And for everybody watching and for everybody listening, we just spent another hour with the GOAT, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this episode, subscribe to our YouTube channel or find our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever your favorite place to listen to podcasts might be. And if you really like this episode, please leave a review for us on iTunes. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.